Bonjour, je m'appelle Moshe, cadeau Q. Welcome back to the Pecan Grove Recreation Area. Starting the fourth and final installment of the Ferdinandina powderhorn. In the first 3+ episodes, I have talked a little bit about how to make a powderhorn, how I made it, a little bit of the historical significance of it. But this one is really a journey, the fulfillment of a journey on discovering the history of the local area. It is a journey that started back in the summer. Let me go back a little further. It actually started probably for me back in the early 1970s. I was a young preteen and teen, and like so many other youth in that era, I became enamored with the movie called Jeremiah Johnson.
Nobody knows whereabouts he come from, and don't seem to matter much. He was a young man, and ghosty stories about the tall hills didn't scare him none. He was looking for a Hawken gun, 50 caliber or better. He settled for a 30, but damn, it was a genuine Hawken. You couldn't go no better.
Jeremiah Johnson probably launched more people of my age into black powder enthusiasm more than any other cinematic efforts. We watched that, and I was like so many others. I had to have a Hawken rifle. Available to me at the time, about the only thing that was available was the Thompson Center Hawken. I had that, but being like most young men of adolescence, I was soon overcome by fumes, car fumes and perfumes, and my interest turned to other things. So I kind of walked away from the black powder scene. I fully retired in 2019. I had always told myself years ago when I retired I was going to build me a flintlock rifle. Didn't come for another couple years, but it finally came. But with that, you have to have some level of, what am I going to do? I mean, you know, it's obviously fun to shoot. It's a great pastime. But I started becoming more and more a student of Oklahoma history, American history, and so I wanted something to go along with that. Jump forward to this year, 2024, which is only about 4 days away from expiring itself. I started this journey with the thought of who am I going to personify in this endeavor? I mean, I can always dress up in old funny looking clothes and just act thing, or, you know, and just go along with the flow, but I had to have a story to tell. And I think all living historians probably want to tell stories. So let's jump forward to that just a little bit. The story that I wanted to tell had to be relevant for my particular heritage. It had to be relevant to my particular regional influence. Being a American colonist or a long hunter back east didn't really fit. I live in Oklahoma, and so what stories were I going to tell about this time period of Oklahoma? Excuse me. What I finally decided on was a couple of things. One, I am of French Canadian descent. My great-great-grandfather came from Quebec to Oklahoma for the land run in the late 1800s. French-speaking, young man came here to develop his destiny and his fortune in the opening of the unassigned lands in Oklahoma.
This land is mine! Mine by destiny!
Actually came here and became quite well off. Not only did he get his original 160 acres, he got much more land holdings surrounding that piece of property. So he actually became an American citizen. We have his citizenship papers. We have his land patent that he was granted for homesteading. We have all that. Okay, so there was one piece of the puzzle of who I wanted to portray, was someone of French-Canadian ancestry. The next thing was what was relevant to this time period, the mid-18th century, in what is now Oklahoma. Oklahoma was part of French Louisiana and was primarily inhabited by indigenous people, and then the European inhabitants were primarily of French citizenry. Got some geese flying over. My journey started early this year when I went to the Oklahoma History Center in Oklahoma City. It's a great facility. Lots and lots of records pertaining to early statehood, territorial times, Native American records, the roles of Native descendants or of Native Americans. But when I really started looking, very, very little of any kind of history from the 1700s. Just wasn't recorded. But I did find a couple of articles in a book. It was almost a coffee table type book that talked about French explorers. It was like 1 or 2 pages, very, very sparse. But it did give me some leads into other documents that became very helpful. A couple of those documents that were very helpful was a publication of the Oklahoma Chronicles, which started in the early 1900s, following statehood, and it chronicled a lot of academic articles of the day that dealt with Oklahoma. One of the articles that I found was a article of one of the early, he was a professor at Oklahoma State, excuse me, he was a professor at Oklahoma University. I'm an OSU fan, so forgive me of that. He did some of the early archaeological work on a place that he deemed as the first white settlement in Oklahoma, and that was a place that he referred to as Ferdinandina. Excavated artifacts, donated them to the Historical Society. That later became the Oklahoma History Center, and some of those artifacts are on display there. Very, very few and very, very little explanation as to what they are and what story they tell. Most of them, let me back up just a little bit. Most of them are display correction at the Sam Noble Museum of History, Sam Noble Museum of Natural History, and it talks mainly of the indigenous people of Oklahoma. There are some references to the artifacts that were found there. No mention of Fernandina, merely just European contact and some mentions with the French. Another article I found was actually a full treatment of Fernandina, complete with some sketches and some other things about what it was thought to look like. That drove me to then do further research, of which I found a English translation of the Pierre Maugret historical documents of American exploration by the French. And he did his work in the mid-1800s. It was then translated, and I found a full English translation of these documents free for the taking from the Metropolitan Library of Detroit. It was really funny. Sent him a text, I think I sent him an actual email asking what I was, telling them what I was asking for, and within I think 48 hours I had a PDF downloadable copy of all 6 volumes of Maugret's. Someone's deer hunting. That may be my nephew. I might ought to check in with him. And so we are in bonus deer season between Christmas and New Year's, so that's probably what that was. With that information in hand, I actually took a trip up from my home here near Kearney, Oklahoma, up the Highway 177 about 80 miles to right onto the Kansas-Oklahoma border to Newkirk, which Newkirk sits on the Arkansas River, and that then led me to the area that thought to be Fernandina. I actually went early September, so the season is different than what you see here, and then I'll explain that when we get on the river. I'm standing here at a little often appears to be neglected parking area in northern Oklahoma in Kay County, and I'm on the confluence of the Arkansas River upstream from Kaw Lake at the confluence of Deer Creek. Traveled up here to check out, or at least just kind of get a feel for the area that would have been about 270 years ago one of the earliest known white settlements in what is today Oklahoma. Just across the Deer Creek is an area that is thought to be the site of one of 2 large Wichita villages, of which then became a meeting place for French coureurs de bois, or voyageurs, who came up the Arkansas from St. Louis, up the Arkansas River from New Orleans, and traded and established a outpost that later became known as Fernandina. Now that sounds very Spanish-like, but in reality it was probably named after the grandson of King Louis of France, who married into the Spanish royal family and later became King of Spain. His name was Ferdinand. So it could possibly be named after that. There is archaeological evidence to support this, some of which the evidence resides in the Sam Noble Museum in Norman, Oklahoma. there are some artifacts that indicate both native activity and European activity. Some of it dates from about the time frame of the 1740s, 50s, 60s, somewhere around in there. So we're going to possibly get in the kayak. The current's up a little bit more than what I really anticipated for as dry as it's been, especially being upstream from a lake. We're going to get in a kayak, possibly go up Deer Creek. It looks navigable for a ways anyway, and possibly try to find the springs that led both native and European occupants to select this site, because not only was it on the river for easy transport, but it also had a good supply of fresh water through 2 springs that are supposedly up Deer Creek. So we're going to get the kayak in the water, and then we're going to primarily focus our efforts on Deer Creek, not so much the Arkansas. Like I say, there's pretty good current on there. I don't want to get down there and then struggle getting back, so to speak. So we'll go take a look at it and see what we come up with. Confluence of the Deer Creek is just around that bend. Okay, this is Deer Creek. It comes in. And you can see the natural rock cliffs that define it. Much more so than just these mud banks. You can see that this is actual rise, and that doesn't look real navigable. We may go up it just to see what we can do, but by and large, right now the water level is such that it's probably not doable. I'm going to go downstream a ways and come back just to kind of get a lay for what it was like leaving Fernandina and see what it was like. We've gone up Deer Creek about as far as the kayak will let us go. There's a mud flat here, and I really don't feel like slugging through it today. That's for another time, possibly when I have my son-in-law with me. But as you can see over here, the bank is very low. Not a big effort. So while the Arkansas River side is pretty steep, the Deer Creek side is very manageable. Now the big rocks along the western shore probably has somewhat stabilized the river in that area. It probably didn't go any further north. It could have gone easily to the east, and as the river meandered over Century, but those rocks probably were pretty much a buttress that it didn't go past. So you could see where this would be a great place for an outpost, a trading post, and I've heard it described as almost a warehouse-like thing for the French. They kept their trade goods here, and then they collected what they were after, and that being the buffalo hides that the Wichita, the Penny, were bringing to them. And so one could easily visualize that.